Hey, welcome to the monthly roundup of articles for dispatches from Holly McKay. Hi, Holly. How you doing this fine day?
I'm doing well, Dennis. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's discuss some of the more interesting articles that you wrote in the month of May. Let us start with New York City's prosecutions of gun crimes, where they make it a big deal, but when you look at the statistics, the number of arrests or investigations that actually result in some sort of final legal action is
Mm.
minuscule. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking because I think regardless of where you stand on the political aisle, we can all collectively agree that gun violence is a huge problem, and in New York City, it is an especially huge problem. And we're sort of led to believe that our leaders are taking this issue seriously, but it's actually hard to think that they are taking this issue seriously when you dig down into the statistics. So I had a look at NYPD data. The most recent available is 2021, and I found that New York police made 4,456 arrests on gun charges in the city. However, more than 1,200 of these were just dismissed outright by prosecutors who just chose not to pursue them for whatever reason. So by the end of 2021, there were about 1,784 cases that were still pending, and only a tiny fraction, 711, actually culminated in criminal convictions. And that was predominantly through plea deals. And this is where it just blows my mind. Only one conviction emerged from an actual trial. Yes, one out of 4,456 arrests. So that's just mind blowing to me. Um, and the fact that 1,200 cases were just dropped for because their prosecutors, maybe they didn't have the resources or time or energy to really pursue it. We can't know the ins and outs of every case. But looking at these statistics, I mean, it blew my mind. Yeah, that's just, one conviction from one trial out of 4,456 arrests on gun related charges.
Yeah, and just to be clear with this, gun-related charges in New York City um, include some pretty egregious crimes that are committed while possessing a firearm. So it's not like, somebody accidentally finding a pistol in their house or something like that the cops come and get you for. These are people caught in the act and stuff like that. And still the statistics of those things reaching final trial or anything like that, or not getting and not getting plea bargained away or whatever, or just dropped outright. That's an amazing stat, and
It is,
something that
and
yeah.
that's why people that are pro Second Amendment get very frustrated because the idea of more laws and more gun control when the basic laws already on the books for crimes are not being pursued. Um, and that's where, the argument tends to get very lost. And it's frustrating all around, especially for the victims of these crimes. I can't imagine being a victim of a gun related crime and then knowing that the perpetrator, good chance that nothing ever came of it. They never had to face the music. And criminals really have little incentive not to commit gun related offenses when they know that they can just walk away. And it's just very frustrating all around for everyone involved, and I'm sure the cops themselves. Why would they put themselves in a precarious situation to arrest someone when they too know that there's a good chance nothing will happen. Um the odds are, in favor of the criminal.
Yeah, it sounds like very, very much like New York is basically using these things as bargaining chips to get something other than actual stuff. Which is it's the prerogative of the prosecutors of the city of New York on how they use the tools they have in front of them. But by the same token, you're very much correctly pointing out that if politicians believe that these things are being used in a different way, they're very much mistaken, and the data speaks for itself. Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's an interesting yeah, opening up the books and going like, what's really going on here? Investigative reporting at its finest, I think. Data-driven analysis is always pretty cool. Let's turn our attention to another piece that you wrote that is a bit more disturbing, and it has to do with the rules of warfare. And so you penned a piece in late May, having to do with the uh, legality of civilian casualties. There are very clearly, according to the Geneva Convention and other things, there are certain types of activities that are just outright war crimes in stuff. But you penned a piece that basically said that causing civilian casualties, including women and children, is a trade-off that can be made by the warring parties and is not necessarily a war crime. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, you would think, and most of us probably walk, and this is why I wrote the piece, most of us sort of walk around thinking that, the idea of killing a baby in a bombing, and which is absolutely unthinkable, um, must immediately amount to a war crime. And it can, but it also cannot. And in and of itself, it's not illegal. And I think with everything happening in the world right now, particularly in the Middle East, and a lot of confusion and frustration, I wanted to explain this. Of course, I got a lot of blowback for trying to explain it when I don't make the rules. I'm the messenger here. But in any case, if you look at the charges that the International Criminal Court are pursuing against Netanyahu and Israel, they're not necessarily they're not about the deaths of civilians, even though there is believed to be many of them. They've chosen to go other routes, like forced starvation, for example. And at first you sort of think, well, why are they charged? Why is the charge forced starvation when so many people are losing their lives? And that is because, as I said, killing can be considered legal under certain circumstances. So it's a little bit of a gray area. So particularly if you have a military aided by legal counsel, and they determine that the anticipated civilian casualties resulting from a strike are justified and part of that important military objective, it often does align with the principles of warfare. So it's a murky area, and it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it okay to do that, but that is what the law states. Whereas other things like taking hostages, like forced starvation, like forcibly displacing people from their homes, they are in and of themselves sort of blanket war crimes.
Yeah, because those are enumerated war crimes in categories, where this one is um, there were bad people there and we had to go get them, and these people just happened to be in the way that's not necessary. Yeah, yeah, it's um that's a toughie. I mean, because essentially when you're looking at the human aspects of those kinds of policies, uh, once again, it's the innocent that suffer the most, isn't it?
It is, and I'm gonna have to pick up my baby right now because she's crying, screaming. She wants to be involved. Okay. Okay. All right.
Well, you can participate in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's I recommend people read that article because it explains a
Yeah.
lot about what's going on and why international tribunal and court charges are seem to be so weird and seem to have
Yeah.
very little relationship to common sense. But yeah, that's another good one. I mean,
Yeah.
that you've done quite a number of good things this month. Now, yeah, before Raven decides that she needs to be the center of attention for everything, let's talk about this last one. So the United Nations in
You're okay, baby. Come on.
the United Nations is oh, sorry, paying tribute to Iranian President Raisi as part of a standard protocol practice. The head of state dies, you have a day and you do stuff with them. But it so you tend to think, because the fact of the matter is Raisi is probably one of the most brutal people that had been
He
around
is.
on the international scene for a very long time. This is the guy that was going around basically killing women for walking around because they weren't wearing the right
Mm.
clothes. So
And still today, and I
talk
mean,
more about
he
that.
yeah. So Raisi's a very polarizing figure. I mean, his human rights record is absolutely atrocious, and he's been at this a long time. He sort of started his legal career, and mind you, in places like Iran, it's Sharia law, so therefore you're an Islamic scholar, and then can sort of go into the legal world as opposed to here is kind of going to law school. It's a very different process. So Raisi started at 19, and he quickly became known as the Butcher of Iran. In his 20s, soon after the 1979 revolution, when he was throwing opposition figures in prisons, I mean, he was part of a panel of four men that were just sentencing people to death en masse. And it was believed to be at least 30,000 people sort of killed in one massacre alone in 1988 at prison. So you can imagine that's just really the tip of the iceberg. And this man oversaw so many abuses. I mean, I've talked to many survivors. You're talking about women that were 9 months pregnant and having their stomachs stomped on. You're having, women just brutally raped by, Raisi's guards prior to being executed. There was one man that I met who, was forced to eat his own eyebrows after that, like just stuff you can't, sort of a level of cruelty you can't think of. Um, I know, baby. I know we don't like talking about this stuff. So it just sort of goes to show that the UN sort of glorifying this man, and whilst I never want to be someone whoever celebrates the death of anyone, I do think that this is why people are frustrated with the UN, and it's frustrating because you and I, a portion of our tax dollars does go to funding the UN, and to think that they spend that on celebrating this sort of evil points to exactly why the UN is struggling for relevancy and is largely rendered useless in the international
Yeah,
sphere.
yeah. I mean,
Baby.
yeah, I mean, anybody, if anybody looks at Raisi's track record objectively, should very quickly realize that he was the Joseph Stalin of Iran,
Absolutely.
in terms of the brutality that he was willing to inflict on his own people, and quite honestly does not deserve any praise for anything that he did in his career. And
Yeah. And what a slap in the face to victims, to survivors, to their families.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, this is getting to be a bit, a bit more of an editorial rant, for
yeah.
this. But I agree with you. The man was not a good guy, and I think his country is better off without him. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
the other thing that is there is he's not the only guy like that, and his
No.
likely successor will be just as bad, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think, if this is the blanket policy of the UN, I mean, they're going to do this when Bashar al-Assad dies. They're going to do this when Kim Jong-un dies. Like, what sort of
Probably.
world are we living in? Yeah. I mean, it's their
Probably because
policy.
the rules of soft diplomacy are that you ignore these kinds of realities in the at the moment of death. I don't think it serves the world any good, and it certainly
Yeah.
doesn't serve the reputation of the United Nations any good to go do that. I mean, because it was it was an organization founded to make sure that things like this never happened again. And then
And
there
here we
should,
are.
yeah, and here we are. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we could go on and complain about this for a while, but I can see that Raven is
I
now
got a
at this
cranky
point
girl on my hands. I
going,
think she needs changing. You need
yeah,
change, don't you,
okay,
baby? Yeah.
God, yeah,
Well,
Bob,
please
yeah.
subscribe to the Substack, and you can get more info on these and other stories and paid subscriptions. What keeps me being able to do it. So please, yeah, the support for independent journalism is really valuable.
Oh, there you go. All right, thank you, Holly, and I'll let you get back to being the mother that you are with that bundle in your arms, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, bye.